Good morning. How are you guys feeling? You guys warm? Yep, there's silence there. So it's like I woke up this morning and realized how cold it was going to be. And then I came here and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like really cold. It's like it actually is cold in here. And for some reason, it's like people always tell me, like, well, Randall, you're from the north. Like, you should be used to this weather. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, I don't care if I'm from Ohio. I don't care if I'm from the north. It's still cold. Like, I still have skin and it still gets cold. So I woke up and I was like, okay, it's going to be like 20 degrees. Like, that's kind of cold for me. Because I thought I moved down here to get away from the cold, but apparently it follows me, so I'm sorry. But again, I am up here to share with you guys what God has been speaking to me through this week. So that's what I just always want these times to be like. No matter like what's happening in our lives, no matter what the week might hold for us, that if I have an opportunity to share with you guys, I'm just going to share with you guys what God's been speaking to me about, and it just so happens that Holy Spirit works in miraculous ways, and it lines up with what we're talking about. But like I was telling you guys, my week's been it's been a good week. I can't say anything too out of the ordinary happened. But what I always like to do sometimes is just kind of like I was saying last time I spoke, just sit and reflect. And as I was having my moment of meditation through Facebook, and kind of perusing through, and I saw that they had the that 10-year thing, like, what was your picture looking like 10 years ago? And I realized that once I shaved, I look the exact same 10 years. So I have not aged a single day. I am actually, no lie, 19 right now. It's all right. It's all right. It's a gift and a curse at the same time. The way I see it is when I'm 54, people will think I'm 30. So it's all right. But when I was going through those, I was also going through and seeing, obviously as I, quote unquote, got older, apparently, I was seeing my life, like just kind of, passing through the years. And, I got to the picture of Liam, my little 2-year-old, now he's 2. And just watching him grow up, and then like Facebook and like Google, and they have like these really crazy ways of being able to take all the photos of your kids and like put them in a timeline. So it's a really cool like album, but kind of creepy at the same time. Like, how do you know all these pictures of my kids? But I saw this little album of all the pictures that I've taken of him, like kind of throughout the years. And, just slowly watching him grow from this little nugget that I was able to hold in, like, right here to now this long nugget that is, like, starting to hit those twos. Starting to hit that 2 mark. People always tell you, like, oh, terrible twos, terrible twos. And I was realizing, like, nah, Liam is, like, the best kid ever. He's my firstborn. He makes life easy. He's just so easy to get along with, so personable. Like, there's no way he is going to have a bad attitude. There's no way he's going to be a horrible kid. And people don't tell you. The first kid's a trap. They trap you because they think, like, oh, yeah, this first kid's going to be good. So the kids following after that are going to be perfect just like him. And it's like, that's not always true. Because now we're starting to experience Liamness, I guess I could say. Like, he's starting to realize, like, wait a minute, I have an opinion about stuff. It's like, wait a minute, I can respond. So it's like, hey, Liam, can you go get your clothes? No. And you're like, well, wait, that wasn't a question. Like, Liam, go get your clothes. No. It's like, so how do you respond to a 2-year-old that's starting to form that opinion? Then you're like, okay, well, it's all right, I'll just nurture him through these moments. Just nurture him through these moments. And then he starts running away from you. Like, Liam, you got to get a diaper on. Like, that was our experience this morning. Liam, you cannot run around without any clothes on, without a diaper on. You can't jump on our bed and sit on my pillow. I don't want baby bum on my pillow. because you're not quite potty trained yet. So I don't want that. But I nurture him through these moments, and I start to realize, like, man, he is growing up. He is growing up. Like, no matter how many times you talk to parents, I don't know how many times I've talked to parents saying, like, okay, hey, we're having a kid. Like, what do I need to know? They say, like, well, here's how you hold a baby. I'm like, all right. Because I'll be honest, I told myself growing up that I would not hold anybody's baby until I held my own. So I went a good 20-something years without holding a baby because I thought I was going to break them. Like, it's just right there. So I was like, all right, I found out how to hold a baby. Liam was my first diaper I had to change. The first, pee bullets I had to dodge. So parents can tell you these things, like, hey, here's how you do these things, but there's, some things that they just can't say. They can't tell you because you have to experience them. You have to go through those moments of, okay, this is what it's like to deal with a 2-year-old with an attitude. Not every 2-year-old's the same. This is what it's like when they start growing up and forming an opinion. Not every child's the same. So when I start realizing these things, like, man, I am in a position to shape this child's life. That's when the gravity of parenthood starts to come in. It's like, wait, everything I'm doing right now, they're watching. Because you don't realize you say a lot of stuff until that kid starts to repeat it back to you. You're like, whoa, wait, where'd you hear that from? So I'm realizing, I'm in a position to shape the life of Liam Alexander. That curly-head, blue-eyed boy that I call my son, I'm in a position to change his life. Now, for some of us here who aren't parents, that might not be a thing like, well, Randall, I can't necessarily relate to that. But something that we all can probably relate to is that no matter the position of a parent, some of us might be school teachers, some of us might be supervisors, some of us might just be employees. We're putting ourselves on a platform where everyone else around us is going to be watching. So whether we realize it or not, people are always watching us. So we're building up a platform from the experiences that we've had and from the things that we're going through at the moment. And while we're on that platform, we have to ask ourselves, wait, now what am I going to say? What am I going to say when I'm on this platform that everybody's watching me? And then from there, what am I hoping to accomplish? And as we've been journeying through the book of Acts, we're coming up to the tail end, and we're going to start seeing this in Paul's journey. We're seeing how he had built up this platform, and now he's saying, hey, this is what I got to say. And this is what I hope to accomplish. So if you guys can turn with me to Acts chapter 26. So like I was saying, we're coming up to the tail end, and I don't know about you guys, but for me, I see these latter parts of Acts like the season finale of your favorite show. When you're coming up to the season finale, and then they do previously on, and you start seeing everything kind of just happening. Oh my gosh, I caught up with the whole season in this 30-minute blurb they did in the previous part. And that's what we have here in Acts chapter 26, because Paul essentially goes over everything that's happened thus far. And then it kind of pushes us on into the following chapters of hey, this is it. This is the end of Acts, and this is where we go from here. So to give you guys a little quick recap of, kind of what's been happening. So in chapter 25, the last part of chapter 25, you have Paul that's on trial. And while he's on trial, again, you have the Jews that hate him. They want to kill him, but yet the people can't find anything against him. So he's on trial, and Festus is all right, we're going to bring in the king, and we got to try and get this thing resolved. But the thing is Paul's asking to go to Caesar. And I can't just say like, all right, hey, King Agrippa, like, let's just send Paul to Caesar. It's like, no, I have to like kind of tell Caesar why we're taking up his time to have this trial. So Festus is like, okay, Agrippa, like, you need to give me something to write in this letter to Caesar to say, like, this is why Paul's on trial. So listen to this guy and throw me a bone, help me out here. So that's where we get in chapter 26. And so how we're going to kind of go through this is I'm going to read a couple of verses, and then we're going to kind of like look and dissect and kind of see like, all right, God, I'm going to share with you guys what he's been speaking to me about. And then we're going to kind of move on a little bit further and we're going to start building this picture. So we're just going to start building this picture. So in chapter 26, verse 1, it says, "So Agrippa said to Paul, 'You have my permission to speak for yourself.' Then Paul stretched out his hands and made his defense. 'I consider myself fortunate that it is before you, King Agrippa. I am going to make my defense today against all the accusations of the Jews, especially because you are familiar with all the customs and controversies of the Jews. Therefore, I beg you to listen to me patiently.'" When I first read this part, I thought it was kind of funny because I'm like, man, like Paul is saucing it up here. He's like, "Oh, King Agrippa, I find myself fortunate that I can speak to you." So Paul's like, all right, I'm gonna sauce up King Agrippa a little bit. And so he continues in verse 4. "My manner of life from my youth, spent from the beginning among my own nation and in Jerusalem, is known by all the Jews. They have known for a long time, if they are willing to testify, that according to the strictest party of our religion, I have lived as a Pharisee. And now I stand here on trial because of my hope in the promise made by God to our fathers, to which our 12 tribes hope to attain, as they earnestly worship night and day. And for this hope I am accused by Jews, O king. Why is it thought incredible by any of you that God raises the dead?" Verse 9, "I myself was convinced that I ought to do many things in opposing the name of Jesus of Nazareth. And I did so in Jerusalem. I not only locked up many of the saints in prison after receiving authority from the chief priest, but when they were put to death, I cast my vote against them. And I punished them often in all the synagogues and tried to make them blaspheme. And in raging fury against them, I persecuted them in foreign cities." So what we see right here is that everything that has happened to Paul in his life, so he talks about his youth, he talks about his position as a Pharisee, he talks about all these things because all these things form a platform for him to stand on. So it's not like he's just a random guy off the street. He's like, well, no, hey, guess what? I lived as a Pharisee. I was a Pharisee. That's the strictest part of our religion, of the Jewish religion. So they know everything that I've experienced and everything that I grew up doing. They know everything that I know. So I'm on this platform now building up my case. And so we have to ask ourselves, what platform have you been given to speak on? What platform has each and every one of us been given to speak on? For me, it's a parent. Again, for some of you, it might be, well, I'm a supervisor. I'm a teacher. That puts us in a position of influence. That puts us in a position to talk and change the lives of others. So we have Paul right here saying like, hey, everything that I've experienced, I was a Pharisee, I did all these things. And now because of my experience, guess what? I'm talking to kings and governors and officials. That my experience has allowed me to influence you in some way. So we look at our lives and say like, okay, the platform that I'm building on, that I'm standing on right now, how is that being used to influence? How am I leveraging my position for Christ? Am I just going to work and saying, all right, I'm at work? Or am I going to work and I'm leveraging that for Christ? Am I going to school as a student and leveraging me being a teenager for Christ? Am I leveraging my parenthood for Christ in the life of Liam? So how are we leveraging our platform? How are we leveraging the actions, the words, and the things that we do? How are we leaning that towards Christ? And in verse 6, it says, "And now I stand here on trial because of my hope in the promise made by God to our fathers, to which our 12 tribes hope to attain, as they earnestly worship night and day." Paul is saying that I'm not standing here because I committed some crime. I'm not standing here because I'm a murderer, a liar, or a thief. I'm standing here because I'm proclaiming the gospel. I'm standing here because I'm saying, hey, Jesus is the way. I'm standing here because Paul is claiming that the gospel is the promise that Israel has been longing for night and day. So he's leveraging his position. He's leveraging the things that are put against him to say, hey, I'm leveraging this for Christ. I'm saying that he is the gospel, that I'm saying that he is the way. And let's see how Paul continues. In verse 12, "In this connection, I journeyed to Damascus with the authority and commission of the chief priest. At midday, O king, I saw on the way a light from heaven, brighter than the sun, that shone around me and those who journeyed with me. And when we had fallen to the ground, I heard a voice saying to me in the Hebrew language, 'Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? It is hard for you to kick against the goads.'" We're going to pause right here because people might be like, a goatee? So to kind of give it a little picture, so a goad was used as an instrument to help oxen move. So it was this rod that had a metal prong, and as the oxen was there, the farmer would poke the oxen, and the oxen would move. And if the oxen started kind of veering off one way, would poke the oxen would move in the correct direction. But the saying of it's hard to kick against the goad is when that oxen would want to almost be defiant and kick back. But the problem is when they kicked back, they actually caused more harm to them than good, because now they're pushing themselves even more into that metal prong. So when he's saying here, it's hard to kick against the goad, he's pretty much saying, like, Saul, why are you making things more difficult for you? I'm on a mission. This is the movement that's happening. And guess what, Paul? You can't stop it. So it's harder for you to kick against the goad and to go against what's happening than to just go with me, to go and be along this mission. So we continue in verse 15. "And I said, 'Who are you, Lord?' And the Lord said, 'I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. But rise and stand upon your feet, for I have appeared to you for this purpose, to appoint you as a servant and witness to the things in which you have seen me, and to those in which I will appear to you, delivering you from the people and from the Gentiles to whom I am sending you, to open their eyes so that they may turn from darkness to light and from the power of Satan to God, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and a place among those who are sanctified by faith in me.'" Paul continues, "Therefore, O King Agrippa, I was not disobedient to the heavenly vision, but declared first to those in Damascus, then in Jerusalem, and throughout all the region of Judea, and also to the Gentiles, that they should repent and turn to God, performing deeds in keeping with their repentance. For this reason, the Jews seized me in the temple and tried to kill me. To this day, I have had help that comes from God. And so I stand here testifying both to small and great, saying nothing but what the prophets and Moses said would come to pass, that the Christ must suffer, and that by being the first to rise from the dead, he would proclaim light both to our people and to the Gentiles. So Paul had established his platform by giving some background of who he was and where he came from as a Pharisee. So he established this platform, and so now he's standing on this platform speaking to kings and officials and governors, and he's speaking. He's testifying, and he's not just saying some outlandish things. He's giving his testimony. So this whole entire section that we just saw is Paul's testimony. Paul's testimony of what's happened to him, where he's come from, how Jesus is moving, and how he moved in his life. So we have to ask ourselves, what are we going to say when you're on your platform? What are you going to say when you're on your platform? Again, when you're a student or a manager, are you just going to come to work and allow it to be another day? Or again, are you going to influence? Are you going to allow for life change? And what's interesting is because we see this in the following verses with Paul. So he said the things that he was going to say. He said his testimony, and in verse 24, we have an interesting thing because you have Festus, who kind of interrupts Paul, and Festus says with a loud voice, "Paul, you're out of your mind. Your great learning is driving you crazy." So Festus is like, okay, I heard everything you just say, but skirt, Paul, you're insane. And what's interesting about that is because it's like, do you actually believe the stuff that you're saying? You said that you're riding to Damascus, and then all of a sudden this bright light comes, knocks you off your horse, and you hear Jesus talking to you. Like, do you really believe that? And Paul says, I'm not out of my mind. Most excellent Festus. So it's like, hold up, Festus. Most excellent Festus. Slow down. I'm not out of my mind. But I'm speaking true and rational words. For the king knows about these things, and to him I speak boldly. For I am persuaded that none of these things has escaped his notice, for this has not been done in the corner. So when you have Paul speaking, Paul's like, I'm speaking truth. I'm speaking boldly. Why? Not because this is something that's crazy that's happening, because I know it's truth. If you know the truth, why would you be ashamed to share it? If you are on trial for something and the judge is saying, hey, where were you on September 2nd? You're not going to say, I don't know. It's like, no, I was sitting at home. That's true. So you have Paul standing right here saying, they're asking like, all right, Paul, give me your defense. And he's like, all right, here's what happened. Here's my platform. Here's who I am. I'm a Pharisee. All these Jews know this about me. And now I'm going to tell you my testimony that I was on my way to Damascus. And then I saw Jesus, and Jesus was like, why are you persecuting me, Paul? And then from there, he changed my life. And then from there, I shared with those in Damascus and those in Jerusalem. To the Gentiles, I did all these things. So you can't deny me because that's my truth. I'm sharing the truth about the truth. You can't deny the things that I'm saying. And I'm not ashamed to share it. It's crazy because later on in Romans, Paul says the same thing, for I am not ashamed of the gospel. For it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jews first and then to the Gentiles. So if I know the truth, I'm not going to be ashamed to share it. And he goes on in the latter part of verse 26, talking to King Agrippa, saying, like, none of this has escaped your notice because it wasn't like it was being done in a corner. So we have to ask ourselves, if we're living our lives, if we're standing on our platform, if we're proclaiming that we're Christians, are people really going to see that? Are people going to see that? Or have we been living our life, have we been living our Christianity in a corner? Have we been living our Christianity in a corner to where no one actually really notices? And it's not to say like, all right, well, hey, guess what? I'm a Christian, look at me. I mean, you have that saying like, you know someone's in CrossFit because guess what? They'll tell you. I mean, I'm in CrossFit, so hey world, I do CrossFit. But it's not to say like, okay, hey, I'm a Christian, so let me tell you I'm a Christian. Hey, I'm a Christian, look at me, I'm a Christian. Look at me doing all these good works. I walked Grammy Fufu across the street because I'm a Christian. I saved this cat from a tree. You know why? Because I'm a Christian. And because I do CrossFit. Try ring muscling up that tree. But he's saying it's not about that, but he's saying that it's public knowledge. So when we look at our life and I'm like, okay, am I living my Christianity in a corner? Are we living our life to where people aren't really noticing? Where it's like, okay, we're having people over our house and we're realizing like, all right, hey, you know, they're coming over our house. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like almost every house has like that corner or like the drawer when you don't want people to know your mess, so you like kind of stuff it in the corner or you stuff it in the drawer because you want your life to appear organized. We have a drawer and a corner at our house. You're like, wait, your house is dirty? Like, yes. You know, live in a dirty house. But it's not always dirty. It's a work in progress. But when we think of our Christianity as, okay, is my Christianity part of my life? Or do I have a shelf Jesus? To where, oh, so-and-so's coming over, so I'm going to take it off the shelf and put it in the drawer. I don't want them to know. Or I'm going to take it and put it in the corner. I want to appear that my life is organized and that my life is together. I don't want to offend them because for whatever reason, I'm kind of ashamed. So do we find ourselves putting Jesus in the drawer and then we only pull him out when it's the opportune time? That we only take him down and show him around when it benefits us, when we're like, oh wait, nope, these are safe people. I can take Jesus out the drawer. I can take him from out the corner. But Paul is saying like, hey, King Agrippa, like this wasn't done in a corner. I didn't put Jesus away. This is my testimony. This is my life. This is who I am. And Paul is speaking boldly because he knows what happened to him, and it can't be denied. Because your testimony is your testimony. No one can deny it unless it's not true. So I remember growing up and thinking when we would have these testimony services at my parents' church and people would get up and they would share. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that crazy thing happened in their life. That's not nearly as awesome as what's happening right now. Like nothing's really happening to me. Or when people say like, hey, you know, share your testimony. And then someone gets up like, oh, I was a drug addict and then I accepted Jesus and now I'm completely clean. And then you're sitting there like, I've known Jesus my whole life. Like that's not nearly as awesome as that. It's not about that. It's about understanding what has God done in your life. Has God kept you for 29 years, 30 years, 50 years, however long? Has he changed your life around? No matter what's happening, God's moving, and guess what? That's your testimony. Because it's your testimony. And no one can deny it unless it's not true. So no one can deny how God impacted my life when I was 19 years old in college, thinking that I should be able to do everything, but found that I could barely was able to walk. I couldn't eat solid foods. That I needed to be in a wheelchair. No one can deny how God used my friend and told me when I was like, I don't know why this is happening to me. This isn't fair. And she told me, I don't know why it's happening either, but I know God has a plan. So no one can deny how God impacted my life and how I had my hope in him when I was in the ICU for a week. And I had treatments, procedures, and surgeries years later. No one can deny that experience that has been in my life and how God has impacted me. No one can deny how God is still moving in my life to where I can do the things today that people say I shouldn't be able to do. Because that is my testimony. And that's how God has been using me to not say, hey, look at me, but to say, hey, look at God. Look what God has done. Look what he is doing. And so that's why for me, and I don't know about you guys, but when I read the Psalms of make a joyful noise unto the Lord, it's more than just words on a page. It's more than just me trying to conjure up feelings of, okay, I got to be joyful. No, it's me remembering this is what God has done. This is what he is doing. This is why I'm joyful, because I saw where he brought me from. I saw the struggle, the pain, the turmoil, the challenges that was facing my life. And I saw how he is moving in my life today. And I can see now, like, God, there is a hope in you. There's a hope in you how you're moving in my life now. And there's also a hope to know that there is one day that my body will be perfect. That the things that I'm going through right now will not last forever. So I'm hoping in Jesus, knowing that there is a future hope. But that's my testimony. So what's yours? You're on your platform. You have influence over people. So what are you going to tell them? Are you going to show them Jesus, or are they just going to see you? Are you going to say, hey, this is what God has done and this is what he's doing? Or are you just going to be quiet? And verse 16 just stands out because Paul says, Jesus said, but rise and stand upon your feet, for I have appeared to you for this purpose, to appoint you as a servant and witness to the things in which you have seen me and to those in which I will appear to you. So God called you to share what he has done. Everything that's happened to you up until this point, he's called you to share it. And the thing is, he's not done with you yet. He's still moving in your life. He's still working in your life. He's still showing you new experiences. So Paul used this platform to share Jesus, to share his testimony, to share what God has done in his life and how he has used him to impact the world thus far. And that kind of brings us up to my last point, and what are we hoping to accomplish? So we're on our platform, we're speaking about what God has done, but what are we hoping to accomplish from this? In verse 27, King Agrippa, do you believe the prophets? I know that you believe. And Agrippa said to Paul, in a short time, would you persuade me to be a Christian? And Paul said, whether short or long, I would to God that not only you, but also all who hear me this day might become such as I am, except for these chains. Paul's hope, his desire, our hope should be that every person we come in contact with will come and know Jesus. Every single person. Because God is saying, use your influence, leverage it. Use your position, use your power, use your privilege, leverage it for me so that the people around you will come to know me. But I know this can be easier said than done because, let's be honest, we all find it sometimes maybe a little difficult or awkward when someone like Festus says, like, whoa, you're insane. Do you actually believe that? Or if someone says, like, wait a minute, are you wanting me to become a Christian? Because we find ourselves, I don't know about you guys, but at least me, find myself in one of two positions to where it's like, okay, you're hanging out with your friends, and it's either one of two things. Either you're very loose and you're just kind of like, we're relaxed and we're chilling, it's all fine. And then that person goes on like, wait a minute, aren't you a Christian? Like, aren't you going to invite me to church? And you're like, it's a little awkward when the person has to ask you, like, wait, aren't you going to invite me to church? Like, we've been spending this hour and a half together and you never once mentioned anything about Jesus because I know you're a Christian, I know you're a pastor, I know all these things about you, but yet you've never once mentioned Jesus to me. That's one of those hashtag awkward moment when. Or we find ourselves being so rigid, like, all right, Jamie's my project. I've been working on him for 6 months now. So now I'm going to do it. When we're hanging out tonight, I'm going to do it. I'm going to just say, I'm going to make him become a believer. People aren't projects. People are people. But when we have this idea that, okay, this so-and-so's Jamie's a project, we're hanging out, we're like, that was a hilarious movie. Especially the part where they were like, aim for the bushes, and they jumped. Super hilarious, such a fun time. Man, I'm glad we hanged out. So do you want to know Jesus? And the person's like, whoa, wait, what? It's not about the bait and switch. We can't bait someone in saying, hey, you know what? We're coming to have some food afterwards, and you should come to this get-together. And the person's like, all right, sweet, free food. And you're like, gotcha, it's church. It's like, whoa, wait, what? Quick, lock the doors. If they don't realize that you're a Christian and you're saying, hey, I want you to come to church, and then, afterwards we'll hang out, we'll have food, is your Christianity in a corner? If they don't realize that, hey, I am sharing Jesus with you in my actions, in my words, in my movements through life, I am sharing Jesus with you in every single step of the way, is our Christianity in a corner? So when we are living our lives, because we're realizing like, well, Randall, but still it's an awkward situation. I find myself in one of those two camps of either I am too loose and then I don't understand like when to actually transition and talk to them about Jesus because they end up asking me about Jesus and I'm like, I probably should have asked that beforehand, or I just try and like feel like every single time's a bait and switch. When we live our lives as this is my Jesus life, this is my normal life, there's always going to be room for the enemy to come in between that. When we're saying like, okay, hey, when I'm at work, I'm at work. When I'm at church, I'm at church. When I'm at home, I'm at home. There's always going to be room for the enemy to come between there because that's not our life. The reason why it wasn't awkward for Paul when Festus said, hey, you're insane, or when Agrippa said, hey, do you want me to become a Christian? He didn't lose a single step because he was like, yeah, I want you to become a Christian. Like, that's my hope for everyone here in this room. No, I'm not insane. Like, this is what Jesus has done in my life. Because once Paul had that encounter with Jesus, his life became a life of Jesus. if we're moving our life trying to still hold control over a portion of it, Jesus is like, no, I want it all. So we can't live our lives in two spheres, saying, God, you can have this part, but this part's mine. No. If we live like that, yeah, it's going to be awkward every single time when someone asks about Jesus, when we try and share Jesus with someone. It should be as normal as just the outflows of every single word. You didn't have Paul thinking like, okay, well, here's Jesus, and now I'm going to try and talk about tent making. It's like, well, no, it's like, hey, I'm a tent maker, but guess what? I'm also a believer, and I'm going to tell you about Jesus. Do you not know Jesus yet? Well, let me tell you what he's done for me. Like, this is how he's moved in my life. It should be an outflow of who we are because our life is a life of Jesus. And as I close and the band can come back up, in light of this, where do we go from here? Where do we go? The hope that we have in Jesus must permeate through every part of our life. If I hope in Jesus, then every single person will see that. As a CrossFit coach, people are going to know, hey, I'm a believer. As a parent, Liam's not going to go 18 years and not realize that Jesus is the hope that we are resting in. Every single person that we come in contact with, our hope should be that they would come to know Jesus. So that should be our prayer. That as I move through my life, that every person I come in contact with, that they will see Jesus. As I move through school, as I move through my job, as I drive down the street, when that person cuts me off, that's usually when when our real selves can tend to come out. Like, why'd they cut me off? But are they going to see Jesus? So we have to ask ourselves, how am I showing Jesus? How am I using my platform to leverage Jesus? How am I speaking the testimony that he's given me, how he is moving in each and every day in my life? How am I sharing that to people and showing Jesus? You can't grow tired of that. You can't grow tired of, oh man, we're going to talk about Jesus again. It's like, that's who we are living for. That's who we're living for. So if you're growing tired of something, then it must not be a big interest of you. Again, bringing out CrossFit. You can have people talk about CrossFit all day. I can talk about nutrition all day. I can talk about nutrition all day. But guess what? I can also talk about Jesus all day because he is a part of my life. And if there's ever a moment where I go like, I don't really want to talk about that, whoa, that's a self-check, Randall. That's a self-check. Am I taking Jesus and putting him back in the corner, or am I letting him sit front and center in my life? So we have Paul here saying that Jesus said it's hard to kick against the goat. It's hard to go against what's happening. It's hard to go against this movement, this mission. So as you come along this mission with me, leverage your influence, leverage your platform, leverage your testimony. But not so that they can see you, but so that they can see me. So that, as you said, that everyone who comes in contact I come in contact with, that they would find their hope and their faith in Jesus. And some of us here might be like, well, Randall, that's not me though. I don't have that relationship with Jesus. Well, guess what? That's our hope here today. Each and every moment, each and every week, those who are far from God to come near to God, those who don't know him to know him. It's not a surprise. Yes, we're having lunch afterwards, but guess what? You came here to hear about Jesus. So if you don't know him, our prayer is that God will open up your eyes so that you can see him moving in your life. That you will see how every single step of the way God has been nudging you, drawing you closer, saying, come to me. So again, that is our prayer. That we hope in Jesus. That everyone will come to know him. That we'll leverage what we've experienced and share it to the world.